And I think that's one of the reasons why these myths have endured for so long. They speak to something universal in the human experience, to our fascination with the unknown, our longing for meaning, and our struggle to make sense of the world around us.
You know, it's funny. We started this deep dive wondering if dragons were real creatures,
Yeah.
and now we're talking about philosophy and the meaning of life.
Well, that's the beauty of exploration, isn't it? It often leads us down unexpected paths, challenging our assumptions and broadening our perspectives.
Speaking of challenging assumptions,
Okay.
I have a bit of a confession. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole researching dragon myths,
Uh,
and I came across some theories that, well, let's just say they're a bit out there.
oh,
Mm.
do tell. I'm always intrigued by unconventional perspectives.
Okay, so you know how we were talking about those ancient dragon-slaying legends?
Yeah.
What if those weren't just stories?
Oh.
What if there was an actual organized effort to wipe out dragons?
You're suggesting something beyond natural extinction,
Exactly.
like a deliberate campaign.
Yeah, imagine if ancient governments or religious institutions viewed dragons as a threat to their power, to the established order. What if they decided to eliminate these creatures not just for safety, but for control?
It's an intriguing theory. And I suppose there could be evidence of such a campaign hidden in plain sight. Think about all the ancient libraries that were destroyed, all the historical records that were lost. What if those lost texts contained accounts of a systematic dragon eradication program? Imagine if those stories were deliberately suppressed to maintain control, to shape the narrative of history.
Whoa, that's giving me chills. It's like those conspiracy theories about secret societies and hidden knowledge, but on a whole other level. But if such a program existed, wouldn't we have found some trace of it? Like ancient weapons specifically designed to kill dragons?
Not necessarily. Remember, ancient cultures were incredibly resourceful and innovative. What if they developed weapons or techniques that left no lasting trace? Something organic, something that would decompose over time, leaving behind only whispers and legends.
You're talking about biological warfare.
It's a possibility.
That's some next level stuff. It would explain why we haven't found any definitive physical evidence of a systematic dragon eradication program.
It certainly opens up some intriguing possibilities, doesn't it? It makes you wonder about the stories we tell ourselves about the past, about what we choose to believe and what we dismiss as mere myth.
It really does. It's like we're peeling back layers of history. And with each layer, we discover something new, something that challenges our perceptions and forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew.
That's the power of these deep dives. They're not just about uncovering facts. They're about exploring possibilities, questioning assumptions, expanding our understanding of the world.
Exactly. And sometimes those possibilities can be pretty mind-blowing.
Speaking of mind-blowing, I think it's time we turned our attention back to the Bible. We've touched on Behemoth and Leviathan, but those are just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole lot more to uncover when it comes to dragons in the Bible.
Oh yeah, you've officially piqued my curiosity. I'm ready to dive into those biblical depths.
Let's do it. But first, a quick recap for our listeners. We've explored the possibility that dragon myths might be based on real creatures. We've considered the cultural significance of dragons and how they reflect our deepest fears and aspirations. But now we're going to delve into the spiritual dimension of the dragon myth. Are you ready for this?
Absolutely. Hit me with those biblical insights. I'm ready to tackle the whole Satan as a dragon thing. We've been dancing around that concept for a while now.
We have, haven't we? And it's not just about Satan. The word dragon appears throughout the Bible, often in ways that have been overlooked or misinterpreted.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about these overlooked dragon references. All right, so we're diving into the Bible to uncover more about dragons. I have to admit, I'm a bit surprised to hear that the word dragon pops up more than I realized. It's like there's this whole layer of biblical imagery that I completely missed.
Yeah, it's easy to miss, especially with modern translations, often replacing dragon with more familiar terms.
Yeah.
But when you go back to the original Hebrew and Greek, you realize that dragons play a much more prominent role than we might think.
So why the change? Why downplay the dragon imagery? Was it just a matter of making the Bible sound less fantastical to modern readers?
It's probably a combination of factors.
Okay.
As we discussed earlier, the rise of modern science and the shift towards a more secular worldview definitely played a role. It's hard to reconcile the existence of fire-breathing dragons with our current understanding of the natural world.
Right, but couldn't you argue that it also reflects a certain level of, I don't know, maybe discomfort with the more mystical or supernatural elements of the Bible? It's like those translators were trying to make the text more palatable, more rational.
That's a valid point.
Huh?
But in doing so, They may have inadvertently obscured some important truths about the nature of God's creation and the spiritual battles that are woven throughout the biblical narrative.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity. Give me some examples. Where else in the Bible do we find these overlooked dragon references?
Well, let's start at the very beginning with the Garden of Eden.
Okay.
Remember the serpent that tempted Eve?
Of course. Who could forget that sneaky snake?
Well, the word used to describe that serpent in the original Hebrew is nashash,
Nahash.
which can also be translated as dragon.
Wait, are you saying that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was actually a dragon? Like a fire-breathing winged dragon?
It's certainly a possibility.
Oh.
And it would add a whole new dimension to that story, wouldn't it?
Mm.
Imagine Eve being tempted not by a slithering snake, but by a magnificent, awe-inspiring dragon, a creature of immense power and intelligence. It makes you reconsider the whole nature of temptation, doesn't it?
It totally does. I mean, a talking snake is one thing, but a talking dragon, that's next level. And it makes Satan's role in that story even more intriguing.
Exactly. It reinforces the idea that Satan, often associated with the serpent, is a master of deception, capable of appearing in any form to achieve his goals.
Right.
And it highlights the power of those spiritual forces that are often at play behind the scenes.
Okay, so we have a potential dragon in the Garden of Eden. What other examples are there?
There are references to dragons throughout the Old Testament.
Okay.
In Exodus, for instance, God sends a plague of fiery serpents to punish the Israelites for their disobedience.
Nice.
And in Isaiah, we have those fiery flying serpents that we discussed earlier.
Right, the ones that got us thinking about the possibility of real fire-breathing creatures.
Exactly. And there's also Psalm 74,
Okay.
where it describes God crushing the heads of the dragons in the waters. Clearly, these aren't just your average snakes. The imagery is powerful, evocative, and speaks to a much deeper spiritual reality.
It's like those epic dragon-slaying legends we talked about earlier, but on a cosmic scale, God battling these monstrous forces of chaos and darkness.
Precisely, and it ties into that concept of spiritual warfare that we've been exploring. Throughout the Bible, dragons are often associated with evil, with forces that oppose God's plan for humanity.
So even if literal dragons didn't exist, the symbolic meaning is still incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. And it culminates in the book of Revelation, where Satan is explicitly described as a great dragon, a powerful being who seeks to deceive and destroy.
There it is, the Satan-dragon connection we've been building up to. So how does this all fit together? What's the takeaway for us?
I think it's a reminder that the spiritual realm is just as real and impactful as the physical realm. The Bible isn't just telling us stories about mythical creatures, it's revealing the deeper spiritual realities that shape our lives and the world around us.
So those dragons represent those spiritual forces, those battles between good and evil that we're all a part of, whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. And just as those ancient heroes needed courage and strength to face those fearsome dragons, we need faith and reliance on God to overcome the spiritual challenges we encounter in our lives.
So it's not about literally slaying dragons with swords and shields, but about confronting those negative forces within ourselves, resisting temptation, and fighting for what we believe in.
Precisely. And it's a fight we can win, with God's help. Just as those ancient heroes emerged victorious from their battles with dragons, we too can overcome those challenges and emerge stronger, more resilient, and more deeply connected to our faith.
Wow, that's inspiring. It's like those dragon-slaying legends take on a whole new meaning when you view them through the spiritual lens. They become metaphors for our own inner struggles and the ultimate triumph of good over evil.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if those ancient heroes, those dragon slayers, were more than just warriors? What if they were symbols of those who fight for truth, for righteousness, for the very soul of humanity?
Okay, mind officially blown. I think you've just given me a whole new perspective on dragon myths, on the Bible, and on the challenges we face in our own lives. So what's the final word? What should our listeners take away from this deep dive into the world of dragons?
I think the most important takeaway is to remember that there's more to reality than what we can see and touch. There's a spiritual dimension to life that's often overlooked or dismissed. But the dragon myth, in all its forms, reminds us that those spiritual battles are real and they matter.
So the next time you encounter a dragon, whether in a book, a movie, or even in your own thoughts, don't just dismiss it as fantasy. Remember the deeper truths it might represent, the struggles between good and evil, the courage it takes to stand up for what's right, and the ultimate hope of victory. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and may your dragon-slaying skills stay sharp.